The night sky above the alien village was quiet, filled with stars that shone like silver dust. Inside a small home at the edge of the settlement, a young alien girl sat with her family. She believed they were poor but united. She believed they would always protect her. But that night her belief would be broken forever. Her father whispered in a low voice to her mother, thinking the girl could not hear. "The traders are coming tomorrow. They offered a good price. We cannot refuse." The girl's heart froze. She pressed her hands to her chest, trying to breathe. Price traders? She wanted to believe she misunderstood, but deep inside she knew the truth. Morning came too soon. She woke to the sound of heavy boots outside. When she stepped out, her family avoided her eyes. Her little brother cried softly, but her mother hushed him. The father stood firm, his face cold and hard. Then, the traders arrived. They were cruel-looking aliens, tall and armored, with eyes that glowed red in the shadows. They carried long chains and sharp weapons. Their leader smiled with greed as he looked at the girl. "She is young, strong enough. Perfect for the market," he said. The girl gasped. "Father, mother, what is happening?" No answer came. Her mother looked away, shame burning in her eyes. Her father stepped forward and placed his hand on her shoulder, but not with love. "With force, you will go with them," he said. His voice was like stone. "We have no choice." Tears filled her eyes. "No choice? You are my family. How can you sell me?" Her words were like knives in the air, but her father did not flinch. He pushed her toward the traders. The chains clicked as they locked around her wrists. The cold metal bit into her skin. Her little brother screamed, running to her side. "Don't take her. She is my sister." But one of the armored guards pulled him back roughly. The boy fell, crying in the dust. The girl's voice shook. "Please, please don't do this." She looked at her mother one last time, hoping for a miracle. But her mother only whispered, "Forgive us," before turning her face away. That was the moment the girl's heart shattered. The traders dragged her through the village streets. Neighbors peeked from their homes, some with pity, others with indifference. No one tried to stop it. She realized then she was alone, truly alone. The village gate opened and the girl was pushed into a transport cage with other captives. Some were silent, some were weeping, and some looked empty, their spirits already broken. She pressed her forehead against the cold bars and whispered to herself, "It is the end. My own family sold me. If they could betray me, who else in this world could I ever trust?" The cage shook as the transport lifted into the air. The village became smaller and smaller until it vanished from sight. The girl stared down at the land she once called home, now nothing more than a memory filled with pain. The traders laughed as they counted coins and credits, celebrating their profit. To them, she was not a person. She was property. Hours turned into days as the transport carried them toward the great alien marketplace. The girl did not eat much. She barely spoke. She felt like a shadow drifting in silence. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's cold stare and her mother's turned face. At night, when the stars appeared again, she prayed quietly to the endless sky. She wished for freedom, for safety, for someone to see her not as a slave but as a living being. She did not know it yet, but her prayer was heard. Somewhere out there, a human ship traveled the galaxy. Somewhere out there, a human heart was waiting, ready to change everything. But for now, in the cage of betrayal, she believed this was the end. The transport cage rattled as it landed with a heavy thud. Dust and smoke rose into the air. The girl lifted her head slowly, her wrists still bound in the iron cuffs. For days she had been dragged like an object, but now she realized where the traders had brought her. The cold, cruel alien market. The place was enormous, stretching like a dark maze under steel towers. Strange lights glowed red and green across the market square. The smell of smoke, oil, and fear filled the air. Hundreds of cages lined the streets, each filled with captives from different worlds. Some were old, some young, all broken. The traders pushed her out of the cage. She stumbled and fell to the ground, her knees scraping against the stone floor. "Move," one of them barked, pulling her up by her arm as if she weighed nothing. The girl tried to look brave, but inside, her heart pounded wildly. Around her, merchants shouted, creatures argued over prices, and buyers examined captives like they were tools to be tested, not people to be respected. She was taken to a raised platform, a wooden stage lit by harsh lights. Chains hung from the posts, rattling in the wind. The trader tied her to one of them, forcing her to stand under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Strong bones, clear eyes, young age, the trader shouted. His voice echoed across the market. A fine catch for labor, service, or anything else you desire. The girl's stomach turned. She wanted to scream, but no words came out. She wanted to run, but the chains were too tight. She lowered her head, wishing to vanish. As the bidding began, voices rose like thunder. Alien buyers lifted their hands, shouting numbers, laughing with cruel smiles. 100 credits. 200. 300. Each voice was a dagger cutting deeper into her heart. Every number meant she was less of a daughter, less of a person, and more of a product. The crowd pressed closer. A tall insect-like alien hissed in excitement. Another, with glowing blue skin, grinned as he whispered to his companion. The girl felt her throat tighten. Was this her future? To be chained forever, used and discarded by strangers who saw her as nothing. Her knees weakened. She thought of her little brother's tears. She thought of her mother's last whisper. Forgive us. But how could she forgive when she had been sold like meat? Her eyes blurred with tears and the world seemed to spin. She felt dizzy under the burning lights, her heart breaking with every passing second. Then, suddenly, silence spread through the crowd. The trader frowned. The audience's attention had shifted. Whispers ran from one side of the market to the other. The girl raised her head weakly and followed their gaze. There at the edge of the crowd stood a figure different from the others. He was not tall like the insectoid, not glowing like the blue-skinned alien. He was plain, almost ordinary, yet his presence was powerful. His clothes were worn from travel, his boots covered in dust, but his eyes were sharp and human. A human. The girl's heart skipped. She had heard stories of humans, myths whispered in her village, legends of strange beings who crossed the stars. Some said humans were savages. Others said they were protectors. She never believed the stories were real. Until now. The human stepped forward slowly, his gaze fixed not on the crowd, not on the traders, but on her. For the first time, she felt someone was truly looking at her, not as property, but as a person. The trader cleared his throat. Do you wish to bid, off-worlder? The human said nothing at first. He just studied her face, her trembling hands, her broken spirit. And then, with calm strength, he raised his hand. The crowd gasped. 1,000 credits, the human said, his voice steady. The market fell into shock. No one expected such a high bid, not for her. The other buyers lowered their hands, whispering among themselves. Even the insectoid alien hissed in anger and turned away. The girl's chains rattled as her body shook. She did not know whether to feel relief or fear. Why would a human pay so much for her? Was this kindness or another kind of trap? The trader grinned greedily. Sold to the human traveler. The chains were unlocked and the girl collapsed into the human's arms. For a brief moment, warmth touched her skin. His grip was firm but not cruel. His eyes softened, and in them she saw something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. But doubt still lingered in her mind. She whispered to herself, "What does he want with me?" The market lights flickered. The crowd murmured in confusion, watching the strange pair walk away. An alien girl betrayed by her family, and a human who had just paid a fortune for her freedom, or her future. As the noise of the market faded behind her, the girl realized her story was not over. It was only beginning. The girl walked beside the human, her wrists still sore from the chains. The cold market faded behind them, but its shadows stayed heavy in her mind. Her steps were weak, her heart restless. She wanted to believe she was safe, but her fear whispered otherwise. The human did not drag her or push her. Instead, he walked calmly, his pace steady. The crowd still stared, curious about him. Traders whispered, wondering why a human would pay so much for a single alien girl. But the human ignored them all. They reached a quieter alley, away from the shouting buyers and the bright lights of the stage. The girl finally found the courage to speak. Her voice trembled. Why? Why did you buy me? The human stopped and turned to her. His gaze was strong but not cruel. His eyes were dark, reflecting the faint glow of the market lamps. For a long moment he did not answer. He only studied her face, her bruises, her trembling lips, her tears that had dried on her cheeks. I didn't buy you, he said softly at last. I freed you. The girl blinked, shocked. His words were simple, yet they struck her heart like lightning. Freed me. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even her family. But doubt quickly filled her chest. No, no one spends that much money to free someone. You must want something. You must have a reason. The human's jaw tightened. His silence was heavy but not angry. He finally replied, "You'll understand in time." He reached into a bag on his shoulder and pulled out a small flask of water and a piece of bread. He offered it to her. The girl stared at it confused. In her life, every act of kindness had a cost. Every gift came with chains. She hesitated. "Eat," he said gently. "You look like you haven't had food in days." Her hands shook as she accepted the bread. The moment she tasted it, her empty stomach twisted with hunger and she devoured it quickly. Water followed, cool and clean. For the first time since her betrayal, she felt life returning to her body. The human did not smile. He only watched, his gaze calm but thoughtful. It was as if he was memorizing every small detail about her, the way her hands shook, the way her eyes avoided his. Finally, he asked, "What's your name?" The girl froze. Her name. It had been so long since anyone cared enough to ask. At the market, she was only product. At home, she had been daughter until they sold her. Her lips parted slowly. "Alzira." The human nodded. "Lyra." He spoke her name as if it carried weight, as if it was not just a sound but something precious. "What about you?" she asked carefully. He paused, then said, "Daniel." The girl whispered it under her breath. "Daniel." The name felt strange yet comforting, like a distant star shining in the dark. They continued walking through the market's outskirts. Lyra noticed how people stepped aside when they saw Daniel. He did not carry weapons, yet no one dared to block his path. His presence was enough, still fear clung to her heart. She could not stop herself from asking, "What will you do with me now?" Daniel looked at her again, his eyes steady. "Protect you." The word echoed in her mind. Protect. No one had ever promised her that. Not her parents, not her village. And now this human, a stranger, was saying it with such certainty. But could she trust him? Or was this another illusion? Another betrayal waiting to break her? That night, Daniel found shelter in an old storage room on the edge of the market. He set down his bag and sat near the doorway, keeping watch. Lyra sat across from him, her arms wrapped around her knees. She studied him in silence, her heart torn between suspicion and hope. Every so often, Daniel's gaze met hers. His eyes did not wander with greed, nor did they burn with cruelty. They were steady, patient, unshaken by the scars of the world. Lyra thought, why does he look at me like that? As if I'm not broken. As if I'm not worthless. In that gaze, she felt something dangerous. Hope. As she closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling her into sleep, one last thought lingered in her heart. Maybe the myths about humans were true after all. The night air outside the market was heavy, filled with smoke and whispers. Lyra sat quietly in the corner of the old storage room, her knees pulled to her chest. She replayed the events again and again in her mind. The stage, the chains, the crowd shouting numbers, and then the human's voice breaking the noise with a single bid. 1,000 credits. Why? Why would anyone do that for her? Daniel sat near the doorway, silent as a stone. He sharpened a small blade, though his eyes kept drifting back toward the street, alert to every sound. He looked like a man who had seen many dangers before. His calmness was strange, too steady, too certain. Lyra could not take it anymore. "Tell me," she whispered, her voice raw. "Why did you pay for me?" Daniel lifted his gaze. His eyes were deep, hard to read. He let a long silence stretch before speaking. "Because if I didn't, someone else would have. And they would have broken you." The words struck her like fire. He spoke them without pity, without decoration, only truth. Still she shook her head. "You spent too much. No one gives away so much money for nothing. What do you want from me?" Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice low but steady. "Fate put you on that platform. Fate put me in that crowd. Sometimes you don't walk away from fate. You answer it." Lyra blinked. Fate? She had heard her people speak of it, but to her, fate had always been cruel. Her own family had betrayed her. If that was fate, she wanted nothing to do with it. "You speak like you know me," she said bitterly. Daniel's jaw tightened. "I don't know you, but I know what it's like to be sold." The girl's breath caught. Her heart skipped. She leaned forward slowly. You were sold?" For the first time, she saw a shadow pass over his face. Daniel did not answer at once. His silence was heavier than words. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Long ago. Different world. Different chains, but chains all the same. Lyra stared at him, shock filling her chest. The human wasn't just saving her out of kindness, he understood. He had lived something like her pain. A new fear touched her. So, now you bought me because you want someone to share that pain with. Daniel's eyes flashed. No, I bought you so no one else would own you. You are free, Lyra, you just don't see it yet. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The words "you are free" felt too heavy, too impossible. She wanted to believe him, but the chains on her wrists still burned. Her heart still carried scars. Suddenly, loud footsteps echoed outside. Shadows moved under the crack of the door. Daniel rose in one swift motion, blade ready. The voices outside were harsh. The human. He stole our profit. Bring him out. Lyra froze. The traitors had followed them. They would not let go of such a fortune so easily. Daniel turned to her. Stay behind me. The door burst open and 3 armed aliens stormed inside. Their eyes glowed with fury, weapons raised. You think you can take her? One hissed. She belongs to us. Daniel stepped forward, calm as ever. She belongs to no one. The first alien lunged. In a blur, Daniel struck with his blade, disarming him and sending him crashing to the ground. The second attacked, but Daniel kicked the weapon from his hand and slammed him against the wall. The third hesitated, fear flashing in his eyes before fleeing back into the street. Lyra could only stare, breathless. She had never seen such strength, but it wasn't only strength. It was precision. Daniel fought not for blood, but for protection. Every move was to shield her, not to destroy. The fallen aliens groaned, retreating in defeat. Daniel shut the door again and turned to her, his expression steady. You see now? He said quietly. I didn't buy your fate. I changed it. Lyra's chest tightened. She lowered her eyes, tears burning at the edges. Changed my fate. That night, as the fires of the market burned in the distance, Lyra sat in silence, her mind torn between disbelief and wonder. She still feared betrayal. She still doubted the future. But when she remembered Daniel's eyes, steady, unshaken, she felt a spark inside her heart. A spark that whispered, maybe fate is not only chains. Maybe fate can be a hand reaching out of the dark. The night was long and heavy after the fight. Daniel stayed awake near the door, blade resting across his lap, his eyes sharp for danger. Lyra sat in the corner, hugging her knees, her heart still racing from the memory of the traitors. She had seen men fight before, traitors beating slaves, guards punishing the weak, but this was different. Daniel's fight was not for greed or cruelty. It was for her. Yet her mind refused to accept it. Why? Why would anyone protect her? When the first rays of dawn slipped through the cracks of the roof, Daniel stood and stretched his shoulders. He looked at Lyra, who had not slept much. Her eyes were red, her face pale. You need food, he said simply. From his pack he pulled out dried fruit, a small piece of cooked meat, and another flask of water. He placed them gently on the floor between them. Lyra stared at it as if it were a trick. Why are you giving this to me? Daniel raised an eyebrow. Because you're hungry, her voice cracked. Food always has a price. In the market, they fed us so we could stand longer on the stage. At home, my family fed me so I could work in the fields. Nothing is ever free. Daniel's eyes softened, but his voice stayed calm. Then let this be the first. He did not push her. He did not force her. He simply waited. Slowly, Lyra reached out with shaking hands and picked up the food. She ate with small, careful bites, watching him the entire time. She expected him to smile in triumph or to demand something in return. But he only sat there silent, as if it was the most normal thing in the world to feed another person. When she finished, she whispered, Why? Daniel leaned back against the wall. Because you deserve to eat. Because you deserve to live. The words hit her harder than chains. She lowered her head, tears filling her eyes. For so long she had been told she was worthless by her parents, by the traitors, by every cruel face in the market. And now, a human spoke as if her life actually mattered. She wiped her tears quickly, afraid to look weak. But Daniel had already noticed. He reached into his pack again and pulled out a small cloth. Here, he said, offering it to her. Lyra hesitated, then took it. The cloth smelled faintly of metal and travel, but it was clean. She pressed it to her face, hiding her tears. Daniel's voice grew softer. No one should have to hide when they cry. Her heart ached at those words. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust. But trust was a fragile thing. and hers had been broken too many times. Still, something inside her shifted that morning. For the first time, kindness did not come with a chain. Later, as they prepared to leave the storage room, Daniel handed her a small cloak from his bag. "Wear this," he said. "It will hide you from the traitors if they're still searching." Lyra pulled the cloak around her shoulders. It was warm, soft against her skin. She had expected rags, but this felt almost protective. She looked at him with wide eyes. You thought about me before yourself?" Daniel gave a small nod. "You're not property anymore. You're someone worth keeping safe." Those words struck her deeper than any blade. She'd been betrayed by her own blood, but this stranger spoke as if she had value greater than any price. As they walked through the quiet alleys, Lyra noticed how Daniel always kept a step ahead, his eyes scanning for danger. When strangers passed, he shifted his position so his body shielded hers. He did not touch her without reason. He did not order her like an owner. He only acted with quiet care as though protecting her was natural. Lyra's chest tightened. She whispered under her breath, almost too soft to hear. "Is this what kindness feels like?" For the first time since her betrayal, the chains in her heart loosened just a little. When the sun rose higher and the road stretched long before them, Daniel finally spoke again. "Lyra," he said firmly. She looked up, startled that he used her name. "You are not alone anymore. Remember that." Her lips trembled. She wanted to reply, but the words stuck in her throat. All she could do was hold the cloak tighter and walk beside him. The path ahead was uncertain, but something had changed inside her. She had seen her first act of true kindness, and once seen, it could never be forgotten. The road stretched far from the cold market, winding through barren hills and dry plains. The sun was harsh, burning against the cracked ground, but Lyra felt something she had not felt in weeks: distance from her chains. Each step away from the market was a step away from her past. Daniel walked ahead, steady and silent, carrying most of the supplies. His eyes scanned the horizon, alert for danger. Lyra followed a few steps behind, the cloak he had given her wrapped tightly around her shoulders. At first her steps were slow, weak, but Daniel adjusted his pace without saying a word. They traveled for hours. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Finally, Lyra broke it. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again. Her voice was thin, carried by the wind. Daniel did not stop walking. "Because someone once helped me when I was lost." Lyra frowned. "Another human?" He shook his head. "No, an alien. Long ago, I was caught in a place where I thought my life was over. I was broken like you, but someone reached out. They showed me I was worth saving." Lyra blinked, surprised. She had imagined humans as proud, untouchable creatures, but Daniel's past sounded scarred. Her chest tightened. "And now? You are doing the same for me?" Daniel glanced back. His gaze was steady. "Yes, it's my turn." They stopped by a small stream that cut through the dusty plains. The water sparkled under the sunlight, fresh and clear. Daniel knelt and filled a flask. Then he handed it to her. Lyra hesitated, still unused to such care. You drink first." Daniel shook his head. "I'll drink after." "You need it more." Her fingers trembled as she took the flask. She drank slowly, the cool water calming her dry throat. A soft sigh escaped her lips. It felt like more than water. It felt like trust. That night they camped near a cluster of rocks. Daniel lit a small fire, the flames flickering against the shadows. Lyra sat across from him, hugging the cloak around herself. She watched how he moved, careful, precise, always aware of his surroundings. For the first time, she asked a question that wasn't about fear. "Why did you leave your world?" Daniel poked the fire with a stick, sparks rising into the night. His voice was calm but a little distant. "Humans are wanderers. Some of us search for wealth, some for power. I search for something else." Lyra tilted her head. "What?" "Meaning," he said simply. The word echoed inside her. Meaning. She had thought her life had no meaning the moment her family sold her. Yet here was a human, crossing stars, chasing the same thing she had lost. She whispered almost to herself, "Maybe we are not so different." Daniel looked up. His gaze met hers across the fire. For a brief moment, the silence was not heavy. It was peaceful. The days that followed were filled with travel. Sometimes Daniel shared stories of human worlds, green forests, oceans that stretched farther than the eye could see, cities that touched the clouds. Lyra listened with wide eyes, each tale sparking light inside her. Other times, she shared her own memories, the smell of her mother's cooking, the games she played with her little brother, the sound of rain on their rooftop. When she spoke, her voice shook with sorrow, but Daniel listened without judgment. Every night when the stars filled the sky, Lyra found herself looking at Daniel's silhouette by the fire. She noticed how he always kept his weapon close, how he always stayed awake longer than her, guarding their camp. She realized something strange. She no longer feared him. She felt safer because he was there. One evening, as the wind howled across the plains, Lyra whispered softly, "Daniel." He turned his head. "Yes?" "Thank you." Daniel gave a small nod. No smile, no grand words, just steady silence, as if thanks were not needed. But for Lyra, the words meant everything. She curled under the cloak, her heart lighter than before. For the first time since her betrayal, she slept deeply, without fear of waking to chains. The journey was not over. The galaxy was still dangerous, and her past still haunted her. But walking beside Daniel, Lyra began to see something she thought she would never find again: hope. And with every mile they traveled together, she realized, maybe fate had not ended her story. Maybe fate had only just begun to write it. The journey stretched for many days. Hills turned into forests, and forests into wide plains filled with tall grass that swayed like waves. Lyra walked beside Daniel now, no longer trailing behind. Her steps were still cautious, but her spirit was lighter than before. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and crimson, they reached a small ridge. From the top, Lyra could see lights in the distance, small warm lights scattered like stars across the ground. "What is that?" she asked softly. Daniel rested his hand on his pack. "A settlement. Safe people. Traitors avoided. We can rest there." Lyra stared at the glowing village. The sight made her chest tighten. It reminded her of home before betrayal, but fear rose quickly. What if they sell me again? What if they see me as nothing but property? Daniel turned to her, his gaze firm. "They won't, not while I'm here." The words carried no hesitation. He spoke them as a promise carved in stone. When they entered the settlement, people paused to stare. Humans and aliens alike moved through the streets, their voices calm, their faces curious but not cruel. For the first time, Lyra saw a place where different beings lived side by side without chains. Children ran past them laughing. Merchants sold food openly, no cages, no guards. Lyra's eyes widened. She had never seen freedom look so alive. Daniel guided her to an inn at the edge of the village. The innkeeper, an older alien with kind eyes, looked at Lyra and then at Daniel. He did not ask questions. He simply offered them a room and a warm meal. That night, Lyra sat by a wooden table, a bowl of hot stew before her. She picked up the spoon with trembling hands. The smell was rich, warm, nothing like the cold rations of the market. When she took her first bite, tears filled her eyes. Daniel noticed. "Too hot?" She shook her head quickly. "No, it's just, no one has ever fed me like this before." Daniel leaned back, his voice calm. "Get used to it. This is how it should be." Her tears spilled freely now. She tried to wipe them away, but Daniel's gaze stayed steady, unbothered. He did not see her as weak. He saw her as human, or something close to it. Later, when they stepped outside, the stars shone bright above the settlement. Lyra tilted her head back, her heart heavy with emotions she couldn't name. Daniel stood beside her, his arms crossed, watching the horizon as if always ready for danger. She spoke quietly, almost afraid. "Why me, Daniel? Out of all those slaves, out of all those faces, why did you choose me?" Daniel was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Because when I looked at you, I didn't see chains. I saw someone still fighting inside, even if you thought you were broken. That fight deserved a chance." Her lips trembled. "And now, what am I to you?" Daniel finally turned, his gaze locking with hers. His voice was strong but gentle. "You are free, Lyra. Whatever comes next, you choose it. Not me, not anyone else. Only you." The words washed over her like light breaking through storm clouds. For so long she had been controlled, sold, chained. Now, for the first time, someone handed her the power to choose. Her chest tightened with fear and hope all at once. She whispered, "Then, I choose to stay. Daniel studied her, then gave a single nod. No smile, no grand speech. Just acceptance. The wind carried the sound of the settlement behind them. Laughter, footsteps, voices blending in peace. Lyra looked out at the stars above, the same stars she once prayed to in a cage. But tonight her prayer was no longer for rescue. It was for tomorrow. She knew dangers would come again. Traitors might hunt her. The galaxy was still cruel. But now she had Daniel, and more importantly, she had herself. She was not just a girl betrayed by her family. She was not just a slave freed by chance. She was Lyra, walking toward a new beginning. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, whispers would spread of the alien girl who was sold by her own family, and the human who changed everything.